Kia ora and hello. I'm Billy Osteen, an Associate Professor in Community Engagement at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. I actually grew up 9,000 miles away from here in a city called Knoxville, Tennessee. Knoxville has about 500,000 people and is located in the eastern part of the state, which is also where Dolly Parton was born and where the Great Smoky Mountains National Park is. In the city of Knoxville, there are two significant institutions. The Tennessee Valley Authority was set up in the post-Depression 1930s era as a way to electrify and develop the South, and it continues that mission today. The other is the University of Tennessee, which has about 30,000 students and is well known for their sports teams. And the name for the sports teams are the Vols. So growing up, I would go to the football games, which are in a massive stadium of about 100,000 people. And I would cheer for the Vols and not really understand or think that much about what that name meant. It was only later that I found out the origins of the name. And when Andrew Jackson was coming through Tennessee on his way to fight the British in the War of 1812, he asked for volunteers and got a resounding response from Tennesseans. So since then, they would talk about those volunteers from Tennessee. So that's the mascot, that's the nickname. And today it's taken on a meaning around service and around giving back. So on the Tennessee campus, there is this statue with an eternal flame lit. And the creed at the bottom of the statue says, "One that beareth a torch shadoweth oneself to give light to others." So in the four people that you're going to meet in this film, they all do that in their actions. They have lived the volunteer creed, they have lived the volunteer spirit, and they are inspirations for us.
Well, I was a teacher for 10 and a half years, and being a teacher was honestly the only career I'd ever thought about having. From the time I was little to going to college, to being out of college and taking that job.
Where did that come from, do you think?
I think just growing up with our mom being a former teacher, you being in education, and just my love of school and education and wanting to provide for the kids and wanting to help them grow and learn. And then now having our own child, I've been the PTSO president. This is the second year being involved. And I just love being on this side of things because I know how much the teachers appreciate parents and families that are willing to help and give of their time, because the teachers are expected to do so much with so little time.
Yeah. Your job of being a teacher is public service because you're serving the public.
Yes.
And then since then, so you've been PTSA president, you're an active leader within the church.
Yes.
You do the nativity pageant, these other things. So what motivates you to do those extra things?
I think it just gives me a good internal sense of purpose that I'm now not working, but yet I'm being almost more fulfilled by doing these things because I'm choosing to do them.
Right.
But yet, and I want to do them because I believe in them. It's not something I'm being forced to do. I get to choose to do them. And I feel internally satisfied by doing a good job at these things, or trying to do a good job. Well, I mean, our family is very focused on homelessness here in Knoxville with my husband's job or his board work and his volunteering. But I kind of think another component to bring my focus in, and Bearden Elementary, where our son goes, is a small population, but not necessarily homeless, but people that are one step away maybe from that.
Right.
The guidance counselor will reach out to a group of us moms and say, we've got 3 families that aren't going to be able to give anything for Christmas. Can y'all help? And we had a big group of that when I taught, called Moms Anonymous. There's also a handful of kids at Bearden that take home food from Second Harvest every weekend because they're not going to have enough food at their home. So I think just trying to get everyone on the same playing field, which our country is so not, and it seems to be getting worse instead of better.
And do you have any thoughts about how to fix it?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I think I feel like the more people that want to give of their time and their money that can would certainly help. Yeah.
Like, do you think it could be a government thing? Like,
yes. I mean, I definitely think our current administration does not, I personally don't think, care or have a focus on those that are needy or need extra assistance.
Yeah. Tennessee is called the volunteer state. What does that mean beyond the mascot? What do you think it?
I think it means having a volunteer spirit of giving.
Yeah.
And giving back. And I think a perfect example was earlier this fall, which was like a social media storm story of a little boy in Florida. The teacher wanted, the kids to all wear their favorite team, and they were in Gainesville, which is University of Florida, but he wanted a Tennessee shirt. And he homemade one. Sorry, it just chokes me up. And he got, bullied at school about it, and his teacher posted about it. And within a week, the entire state of Tennessee had sent the kid so much Tennessee gear, and he's now been given a full ride scholarship when he's ready for college. So
pretty cool.
To me, that's what it should be about.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, I'm here with Bill Osteen, who's also my dad, and he has had a lifetime of public service in a lot of different ways. And if you could just tell us about how you started in going into public service, maybe back post-college and forward.
After I graduated from college, went to law school. Spent 3 years in law school, during which I spent a summer with the Marines in officer training. After graduating from law school, I went on active duty with the U.S. Marine Corps and served at a couple of places. After the Marines, I took 1 year and went to graduate legal work at George Washington University, thinking I would go into teaching or something like that.
Teaching law school or?
Teaching law school or something, political science, something like that.
Yep.
Probably beyond high school. Although one time I wanted to be a high school teacher and chose to move on and do something different. And while I was at George Washington, I began to think, I continued to think, what am I going to do? Where would I go? I sent in some applications to different places. And before I really heard from anything, I noticed an advertisement of TVA wanted lawyers.
And did you know anything about TVA at that point? Or
at that point, TVA had always had a good feeling with me. From the my very first recollection of TVA was probably when I was in grade school, or maybe before.
Huh.
At that time,
like hearing about it in a history class, or
no. This is back in the 40s.
Okay.
And I probably hadn't started school at that time. My dad was in the Rotary Club, and I used to go with him to Rotary Club at night from time to time. One of those meetings, they showed an old movie, black and white, real movie, produced by TVA about mosquitoes. And I distinctly remember the scenes from it where the wage earner of this farm home could not perform his work because he had malaria. And the whole point was we need to control mosquitoes. And the message was different kind of ways to control them or stop them from breeding. One of the other points was that TVA, because of the dams on the rivers and the control of the rivers, could control the elevation of the reservoirs. And during breeding season, TVA would raise and lower the reservoir so the mosquitoes couldn't breed. And that impressed me at that time.
How old were you when you saw it?
Probably first grade, second grade,
okay.
something like that.
Yep.
So with those good thoughts about TVA, I checked on TVA's job application, sent one in, got a call from the general counsel, wanted me to come to Knoxville. At this time I was in Washington, finishing graduate school at Washington. Come to Knoxville, was interviewed, we had lunch at the old S&W. I was impressed with the camaraderie of the attorneys and the staff. The whole attorney force seemed to go to lunch with us, which I liked. I liked being part of something. That's why I like the Marine Corps. That's why I like law school, because I felt like I was part of something important, or something that could make a difference. And so they made an offer and I accepted. And, Mom and you came to Knoxville, started off as a staff attorney and finished as associate general counsel. I did a lot of personnel work, human resource kind of work, the retirement system work. My first job at TVA actually was in a kind of sort of a general area that dealt with claims, where a TVA car would hit somebody or hit another car and be a claim on it, or somebody would on the reservoir would have an accident and they would blame TVA for it. Whether or not TVA was at fault or not, but they did.
Like, what would be the top thing that you think if we could just make that better, fix that a little bit, it's going to trickle down to all these other things?
I guess I would say economic well-being of the citizens. I think we have too many citizens that are in poverty or on the borderline of poverty, which seems such an anomaly that in this wealthy country that we have, there are people that are not there, don't benefit from that. They're at the bottom of the barrel. It's not because, a lot of them, I guess, it's not because of they don't want to work or they don't have good jobs. It's they have minimal jobs, and they can't go beyond that. And a lot of just poor people. So I think, I don't know, that to me that's, when we drive downtown, you go to those bridges on Broadway, the people there, that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't be there.
Longest involvement, my volunteering, has been with the Susan G. Komen Knoxville Race for the Cure. And my involvement came about because our daughter Meg went to Presbyterian College, and the fraternity that she was in, their philanthropy was the Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure. And ironically, a local group here, our neighbor, Ann Kimmer, was the ZTA chair at UT, alumni chair, and our son Billy and her son Carl had been lifelong buddies. And so anyway, Meg was away at college, but I was here, I had time. I contacted Ann, immediately was recruited into the very first Race for the Cure, which was very first one.
Wow.
1997.
Okay.
World's Fair Park. And some of Meg's high school friends' mothers were very deeply affected by breast cancer. One has passed away. Another one has had to have severe surgery, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, this is a cause I need to be involved with. And immediately saw that they truly were doing a service in Knoxville and also the surrounding community. The UT Hospital staff set up a whole breast cancer awareness now that is just doing all sorts of good things. And the mere fact that 75% of the funds that are raised here through the Race for the Cure and through other things that they do during the year, fundraisers, 75% stays local. And by local, I mean there are 9 counties surrounding Knoxville, and now they have also joined with East Tennessee to provide these services for women and men and families affected by breast cancer.
Yeah.
So I have volunteered and done almost everything with this group for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Knoxville has been a very welcoming place for us as a family and for me as an individual. Early on, I started volunteering through the PTAs and the PTSOs, elementary through high school, for both our son Billy and our daughter Meg.
Yep.
And just connections here, there, and wherever. And then later on, I became involved in garden clubs and the Doolin Art Gallery, which is no longer, it's now the Knoxville Museum of Art. Donating my time and my talents. And then I also was on the board of the Knoxville Nativity Pageant, 2 garden clubs, which I dearly loved gardening, still do. The garden club led me to another fond group that I have been associated with, which is Dogwood Arts Festival. Dogwood Arts Festival started out as started because a group of Knoxville women in the Knoxville Garden Club saw an editorial which was very mean-stated by a New York editor who said that Knoxville was the ugliest city he had been to. Scruffy little city is what he termed it in his editorial. And these women were just shocked by this. So in the early, I'm forgotten my dates now, but anyway.
In the 70s probably.
Yes. They got together and started this dogwood trail. So they were trying to pick out the prettiest parts of Knoxville. South Knoxville, Cherokee, through Sequoia Hills, Cherokee Boulevard. All of these places already had pretty native dogwood trees blooming. And so they got together and they thought, we need to make this into something beautiful. And they have. And I mean, it has continued now for, over 50 years. Yeah. Being the last of 7 children, the only girl, my mother and I had a very close bond. And she had time. And so she would volunteer at my elementary school. And so she was a regular volunteer there. She headed my brownie troop, my Girl Scout troop. And she even substituted occasionally in my older brother's Boy Scout adventures when other people, couldn't be there. Yeah. I just felt that was such a good thing that there was my mom. We lived 2 blocks from the school. We'd walk hand in hand to the school or hand in hand to the church. And I always felt like, I want to do that. Yeah. I want to do that. Yep. Education. Yep. At all levels, and mentoring children who desperately need a mentor. And that's not to cast an aspersion on any group for any reason other than the fact that there are so many people working so hard and they are still below the poverty level. And they just physically, mentally, and financially do not have time to give their children the advantages that so many of us have had. Yeah. I'm trying to help by donating and, time and money to some of these efforts. But I feel like, and it's not just Knoxville, I think it's everywhere. Yeah. I think that's the, the children are the future. Yeah. So we have to support.
It's been absolutely a career that is definitely not over, but one that I did not anticipate when I was younger and when I was in university. Yet the the path to leadership just sort of came this direction, and I felt called to it. First and foremost, I had a very successful corporate career doing sales and marketing work for the Walt Disney Company. However, my wife called me and said she's pregnant one day, and we decided to move back to our hometown here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And that led to a career change that led to me leaving the corporate world and going back to becoming, for the first year our son was born, a stay-at-home dad. And during that year of reflection as a new father, I came to the realization that I'd been blessed with a whole lot of blessings in terms of professional success, a wonderful family, good health, a great community to live in, and the blessings of, at a somewhat of an older age, to be a new dad, the opportunity to be a father. And that led to me to making a decision not to go back into corporate work, but to go work in social work.
Right.
And as a brand new father, I had the opportunity to go to work for a nonprofit agency that spent all of their time investigating child abuse cases. Also found myself through that work getting involved in the foster care system. Our agency ran a foster care program, so there was really nothing more rewarding than hearing a story or being part of a story where a kid who didn't have a family who got adopted.
Yeah.
I love to tell a story about how the worst thing that happened to me growing up was when my mom and dad cut off the charge account at the local diner. We had a local drugstore here in Knoxville called Long's Drug Store.
I probably contributed to that.
Yeah, you probably did. And
Situation.
it's a place where you could go. They had a little counter where you could order a cheeseburger and a milkshake. And it seems like my mom had let us have a charge account there forever. And then I remember as a kid growing up, the charge account got cut off, and that to me was the end of the world. Yet when I came back to Knoxville and got involved working for Child Help, it opened my eyes to these horrible stories, horrible cases of sexual abuse and human trafficking, and kids whose parents couldn't take care of them, had gotten strung out on drugs, and their kids had been abused. And these were all happening in every neighborhood in East Tennessee, every part of town. And I had no idea growing up how absolutely horrific, just as bad, if not worse than the things you hear about on the news. And that was quite an eye-opener. And it led me to 11 years of actually working in that field, where every day I came to work, worried about helping a kid, hoping that we could find a home for a child who was in foster care. And here I got to go home every day to a son who loved me and a beautiful wife. Yet so many of the kids that we took care of didn't have that luxury.
Yeah.
Well, it led me to thinking I've got some skills and an ability to hopefully influence and make a difference in this sphere of helping kids who've been abused. And through that work, when you're trying to make sure that our community is providing a safety net for the most abused and vulnerable folks of our population, as part of that work, you find yourself advocating for these kids locally and on a state level. And I found myself doing advocacy work in Washington, D.C., in our state capital of Nashville, with our local governments around funding, around programs. And when you do that for 11 years, you find that, goodness, I'm actually pretty good at this. And you find yourself passionately advocating with so many of our elected officials. And then at some point you think, gosh, I could probably do some of that work myself. I've actually developed sort of a relationship base and through my hard work, a reputation as somebody who's a straight shooter and an advocate for the community. And that really, it was probably after doing it for about 8 years when I sort of realized that this might be a secondary calling to maybe serve the community in an elected capacity. Because I'd learned a whole lot as an advocate. And I thought that would actually sort of translate into, actually kind of put my name in a hat to serve.
Yeah.
My go-to in my DNA is always going to be to strive to be a servant leader.
Okay.
And a servant leadership model.
Can you explain that?
That it's focusing that you're not here because it's about you. It's your role as a leader is going to be able to serve your team members, to serve your community, and make sure that it's not about you. It's about the outcomes and the community that you're trying to serve. It's not about your ego. It's not about me. It's not about who gets any credit for anything. It's about truly doing this from your purpose is to serve.
Yeah.
Your purpose is not to win the next election or to get recognition. If your purpose is to serve. And I've also found always, the more you can give credit to others instead of yourself, that usually makes everything a heck of a lot easier. I think everybody needs to realize that there's each one of us has a different path to leadership. And as you go through this class, as you meet people that are frankly impressive, folks that maybe you thought, wow, that person has made a huge difference. You got to realize that a lot of those folks that maybe they've made a huge difference, they didn't realize, when they were 20 years before that they were going to have that impact. So all of us have often have a different path to it, but I think it's important to take a risk and to try. I think also as we go through our different paths, I'm sure many of the students, some of you are going to be accountants, some of you could be English teachers, some of you may become social workers and go professionally into the business of helping people. But just because each of you does something different that may match up with your strengths doesn't mean that you can't make a difference in your community and give back. And I think that is really important, because while there are some folks who are gifted with the time and the ability to maybe professionally do something in a way that gives back, and sometimes you get accolades, but really you got to realize it's the other people that have kind of helped you to get you there. But it takes everybody, because every good nonprofit or public service organization, they've got a board that helps raise the money to make it happen. They've got volunteers that help do a lot of the work that you can't afford. And they also have professional folks who are case managers or frontline helpers. And if we had a world where everybody wanted to be that frontline case manager helping, well, that'd be great, but somebody's still got to pay the bills. And it's just important, as important to have that person in your class who goes on to start a successful business. And makes a lot of money. That's okay. But guess what? It also gives you an opportunity to give some of it back.